Grant Denyer now.
It's Grant Denyer.
The gold lady this year. Oh my God, it's Grant Denyer.
And our mom, Shezzy Daniel. She's really crazy.
It's all true.
It's All True, the podcast with Grant and Shezzy Denya.
And George.
Hello, you two. How are we?
Hey, good.
Hey, buddy, you are looking
The
like
goods.
buddy Chris Hemsworth. You were that fit.
Oh, thank you so much. I feel like I'd be the redhead version of Chris Hemsworth. And you're saying to this me every single episode, so I appreciate your compliments, guys.
Are we saying that to you every episode?
Most. Well, in my head, you are.
We'd like to give you like just an update and just to, we're your cheer squad, mate. We know it's hard to get up in the morning and drag oneself to the gym when no one feels like it. And I just want to say you're looking the goods, buddy.
No, that's nice.
Thank you.
There's-
And you know what? I am no Thor, but if anyone out there is trying to get fit and trying to start a journey to better health, it's okay to fail. I've not been to the gym for about 2 weeks. I've been indulging in food and all sorts, but this week I'm back into it. I'm going to have a really healthy diet. I'm going to go to the gym every day. So it's okay to have ups and downs.
Well, if you're not Thor, well, I am. I'm definitely Thor. I'm always Thor after leg day. Yeah. What's going on, mate? What have we got on today?
Maybe we think George looks great because you and I are looking at each other. We don't look great.
You both look fine. Not much has changed.
Mate,
You just set the bar real high as always.
Weekends are hard when you've got kids, mate, because they kind of tend to want to hang around. So
Especially ours because they're young.
You don't have your weekends to yourself, mate. It's not like you're just off just living your best life.
No, and we had one in the bed with us on Friday night or something, and we woke up real crumpled.
Yep.
Not a big enough bed.
No. Well, just because they put their feet in your face, and then I got kicked in the groin, and then I was pushing her back over to Grant's side, and he was pushing her back over to my side.
Yeah, that was me that kicked you in the groin.
Yeah, I was going to say, what did the kid actually do?
Stop pushing her over to me. Cop that.
Oh, classic. Okay.
But I guess the kids are at school all week and then they wait for the weekend to spend quality time with you two.
Exactly. That's right.
They're knackered after doing a school musical, so
They
they're
are.
a little bit
And I was
bit tight and a little bit fragile.
I was going to play a little bit of Sailors singing.
Oh, yeah, you got some?
Yeah, but we didn't check before we set up if I was connected. That was an oversight.
I mean, so
Oh,
I'll
no,
just
we are.
check for you. There you go.
We
Right
are.
on. If you've got a bit, yeah, give us a whirl. This is
Sailor.
Sailor playing young Simba in The Lion King.
Mighty kings, when the beast beware. Well, I'm gonna be the main event, like no king was before. I'm rushing up, I'm looking down, I'm working on my rhyme.
Thus far, a rather uninspiring film.
Oh, I just can't wait to be here.
I'm not like Golden Master.
Yeah.
No one saying
Oh, my God.
I know. How good
What a
was that?
voice.
She was incredible.
She sang like a bird. Like it blew us all away. We
did.
We knew she had a little voice on it, but we weren't expecting that.
Yeah.
Are you sure you didn't just play the Broadway version of that song just then? Because that was just note for note.
I know.
My old man rang me and goes, "Was she miming to the soundtrack?" I go, "No, that was her voice.
That was her.
Singing it all like
She
solo."
sang live. Yeah. It was
Walk out
incredible.
Broadway.
It was incredible, yeah, and she was very good. I was very proud. In fact, like there was lots of parents turning around and like looking, and yeah, I was feeling very chuffed.
So if you're out there
Proud
and you're a Broadway agent and you're looking for Australia's hottest, new talent, musical talent,
And
Sailor
she can
Daniel.
do it within 40 k's of Bathurst, so we don't have to drive too far.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know if I don't know if any of the big musicals are going to base themselves as in Bathurst.
Well, that could be a problem, couldn't it?
Got some
Yeah.
good reviews,
That
but
was, yeah, let's get into them.
Kerry M. Absolutely love your podcast and listen to it religiously.
Yay!
You know what? She says, I reckon my husband would also like it, but he said he would only listen if you had a fishing story. Do you have any stories about fishing so I can get him to listen? I don't know. We talk about George's tackle a lot. Is that enough?
I'm always fishing for a date.
Yes, that's right. It's more like hunting for you.
Do you have any fishing stories?
Do you have any dating stories?
No dating stories. Actually, I do. Just something I learnt from Halloween this year is that if you are going to go out on the town, make sure you don't wear a white Hawaiian shirt and dance with somebody who's got fake blood all over them.
Oh, did you look like you were murdered?
I really did.
Yeah.
My mate said, you've got to go and either change your shirt or wash your face or do something because it is everywhere.
You must have been really up in
Yeah,
that.
you must have been
Were you
very
grinding?
close.
Were you grinding hard?
No, gosh, no. Well, she was, but I wasn't. I was just there as a bystander and somehow got roped into a bit
What?
of close.
She just
monster
ground
death.
on you. You just stood there like a pole, and she just did her work on you.
Yeah, I acted as a pole that night.
She was a pole dancer.
George, are you growing a moustache?
Oh, I'm surprised you can see it.
Well,
Or is that a little bit of
a little
fake
bit of the blood
left over on your top lip?
or a kiss rash?
I mean, it's red, so I can see why you would think that. But no, I am. I'm going to try and participate in Movember, and I've never. This is probably the most success I've had with growing a moustache, and it's.
You're calling that a
it's-
success?
I am. I'll take anything at the moment. Every win is good for me. But yeah, I'm just trying to get there. It's about a bit of 5 o'clock shadow at this point in time.
Looks like
we'll see how we go.
Eating one of those buns straight from the dusty buns straight from the bakery, and you've just kind of wiped your top lip after you've just taken a big bite, and you've just pushed some of the bun dust around.
I think I'm in a really awkward stage. I can't hide it. Like, there's not really any kind of face wear that can cover this. I wish, these are the moments where I wish we still had COVID-19 masks happening because I'd be able to hide this bad boy.
Private. Yeah, you're right. You can sort of and then do the public reveal when it's at its most beautiful bushy best.
Why don't you just get a fake one? Just cut some of your own hair off and just glue it on.
Well, where else? Because I can't grow hair anywhere else apart from my head.
Why is that Mo so curly?
Some underarm hair. Hey, look, do you know what?
True.
I had to dress Grant up in many outfits when we were on Sunrise, and we often glued hair to his face, didn't
Yeah, I
we?
remember being on the side of the highway in a mankini trying to trim up my bloody groin with some nail scissors.
Yeah.
Literally on the
What?
side of the Great Western Highway. Yeah.
Because he had a mankini on and he was about to go up to the mount, and he was
And
like,
it wasn't well kept downstairs.
No, it
So I
looked
thought,
a
I can't
mess.
go on television like this. It's bloody outrageous. So I'm standing on the side of the highway trimming with nail scissors. It was ridiculous. Every trucker thought it was hilarious as he drove past and gave me the horn.
oh, classic.
Guys, I have a review that I'll share with you too, if that's okay.
Yeah.
It is from SoWanna3061. Best podcast I have ever heard. Makes me laugh and cry and feel naughty all the same. You and Shez seem to have the best relationship, but do you ever fight?
Yeah, on this podcast. Has she not heard all the episodes? About air conditioning, about spraying the weeds, about, mate, you name it.
How do you find it, though, pretty much working with each other?
Sucks balls.
Yeah, it's quite annoying because I don't know, because I'll come in and I'll say, okay, we need to talk about this, blah, 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 and Grant's on a different
We have different
tangent.
ideas of content, you know what I mean?
And we also have different energy levels when it comes to different work things.
Yeah. We've said this before. We hated each other when we worked with each other at Sunrise. When she was the producer and I was, the weatherman, and that's pretty much because I was the best and she hated it, right? So it came from a point of jealousy for her. No, I was hard to wrangle, and I was a know-it-all. And
So nothing's changed really.
my ideas were always the best. But she was also very pushy.
Yeah.
And she was a pain in the butt.
so
we
do
don't-
we fight now?
we
is
don't
what
quite-
they asked, not about back then.
Nah, not really. Oh, do we fight?
Yeah,
we
yeah.
fight, but not about the podcast. Yeah. Yeah, like normal couples do. Like, you just have to. Like, life is difficult. The pressure of raising children and keeping their schedules while trying to manage, work and bill payments, and it's a lot. Illness, has been a massive part of this house over the last sort of 6 to 8 months. So yeah, that's
Jazzy's giving you some interesting eyes
Yeah,
right now.
I'm too afraid to look over there. I don't know what's going on, but it feels
I
very
just like-
confrontational. Someone just crossed their arms, and that's
I
not a
just
good
like
sign.
it how you're saying to me, like, you know, we've got bills and we've got kids and, you know, and then we've had sick kids and I'm just like,
Oh, this is where you pretend like you're the only one who does stuff. Oh, I get it. This is a fun game, guys. This is a real fun game.
here we go, see?
What did you call yourself the other day? A single parent. Wow.
Oh my goodness.
I know. Thank you. Yeah.
I hope this was role play.
No, it came out. She called herself a single parent, therefore throwing shade on how much she values my contribution around here. Don't you think that's a bit much? It hurt my feelings.
Well, so on a 3061, they didn't fight, but you've made them start fighting. So
That's how easy we're set off,
you know.
everybody.
No, when Grant goes
Just
away,
a
I'm
single parent just trying to make his way in this world.
His way. It sounds like you said it.
Well, I'm a single parent. I have to agree with you now. You're the boss.
We do fight. Not a lot. I don't know.
I can't tell.
Yeah.
Nah, not.
But
fight.
we'll do a whole episode just for you on a few things that we want to fight over. How's that?
Imagine we just look. There's been some things that
We just
I've been meaning to
unleash.
say and I haven't been saying it. Let's do it on the podcast.
Yes, it's all true.
I don't know how you can top a single parent though. Just quietly that one. I travel for work. Yes.
And look, it really affected him, and now he takes the rubbish out. So
I always
hit
took
the
rubbish
boom.
out,
No, he
mate.
does. Yeah. I'd like to see you vacuum again.
What did
That
we-
was pretty sexy.
Well, now we've got the robot vacuum now, and it does it all. So I've bloody been dethroned. Unless I just sit on top of it and just ride around the house as it does all the work, going, look, I'm
like
doing
a
it.
rolled up.
The baby does
I
that.
did love that reel you put up of Sunday watching you mow the lawn. That was so cute.
Yeah,
Oh,
that was
she
cute.
is. She's obsessed with Grant. It's beautiful.
We're best buddies.
We are.
Yeah.
Now we've got a guest who's waiting. I've got Jana Firestone back on. Yeah.
Love Jana.
Let's get
One
her
of the great
on.
names of all time.
Let's get her on here. Probably
Great
need
first
to
and
get-
last name.
Yeah, it just works together.
Hi, Jana.
Hello.
I'm so glad to see your face because you have had a shocking afternoon, haven't you?
Seriously.
Oh, it always happens with three kids. George and Grant have no idea, but your poor son, is he okay?
What happened?
Well, everything was going perfectly to plan until we got a call from the childcare. Oh, sorry, this is how frazzled I am. The school. Which kid is it? Oh, yeah, that one. And my eldest had, I don't know, probably been showing off and trying to do some kind of crazy trick and slipped from the monkey bars and cracked his head on the wooden platform, that you stand on. And they said, oh, look, he's got a gash. Can you come and we've just stopped the bleeding. So if you probably want to pick him up. And luckily my GP was able to see him straight away and he's had 3 stitches.
Oh my God, like a proper injury.
Proper. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
She's had
We've had a few.
Monkey bars claims another one. They're
I
a
know.
bloody
We had a-
ruthless bit of equipment.
We had a broken arm with one of our
Oh,
children
did
on a
you?
monkey bars. Yeah.
Is he concussed? You made sure you've done the concussion test. This has got both pupils the same size, and he's not referring to you as Jesus or anything like that. Like he knows who you are.
Well, look, I think sometimes I do have Jesus status with him, but no, I think the doctor's checked him out. He's okay, and he's super keen to go trick or treating now. So
Of
a
course.
few lollies should do the trick.
That always
Yeah.
helps take the pain away. There's no doubt.
Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So Jana has started up a new podcast called The Days That Follow.
Was it because you were such a hit on our podcast that you've decided to break away, go rogue, and just do your own thing now?
Absolutely, that's right. The it's all true. People have spoken.
Yeah.
And
And they want more
People
Jana.
want more. You got to give them what they want.
And so just on the weekend, my girlfriend who passed away this year in February, it was her birthday. And so it was a difficult, do you call it a milestone? I'm not sure. Like, is
Yeah.
it
Yeah, I guess it is. It'd be a trauma
Important
milestone,
date.
but yeah.
yeah, an important date. And I was very fortunate to spend the day. We spent the day with, her family, and and we all shared stories about her, and we kind of briefly spoke about, grief. And Grant and I were thinking that grief is something that affects so many people.
Every single person.
Well, yeah, affects.
We all lose someone at some point.
It's very true. So that's why we wanted to get you on, Jana, to have a chat with you about grief, and kind of, I guess, talk to you about some of the ways, in managing that. And I guess, first of all, when I know there's no timeline with how long you feel sad for, but when should you start to feel better?
Well, I guess the key word there, Shezzy, is should. And, we often live our lives with these expectations of the shoulds, we should be doing this, or we should be feeling like this. And unfortunately with grief, this is, going to sound terrible, but there's really no roadmap out of it. And there's no timeline that you should be aiming for. It's going to be up and down. You're going to have days that are terrible. You're going to have days that are okay. And, the grief, you never really get over it. It just sort of integrates into your life with time. So the first year, you talk about milestones and important dates, and the first year is completely uncharted waters. You're getting through, first of all, the beginning of the loss itself, then the anticipation of all of these dates approaching, birthdays, holidays, special anniversaries, or, once you hit the 1 year mark, what's that going to look like? So a lot of people spend a lot of energy kind of in a bit of anxiety around, it's her birthday this weekend, as you just went through. What are we going to do? How's that going to be? Should we do this? Should we acknowledge it? Should we celebrate it? Should we do something else? And that just keeps coming with everybody in the family's birthday and everybody's celebration, a school event, whatever it is that person should have been there for. And I think the struggle for a lot of people comes after the first year. So not to frighten you to think, oh God, you're going to be feeling like this for a really long time, because it's not going to be terrible the entire time. It's going to be peaks and troughs and ups and downs. But after the first year, the grief changes a little bit. It doesn't get better. Sometimes it gets worse because you've been through the first year and the shock and the sort of dizziness of all of that time. And then the second year, it's like, oh God, okay, so this is really happening. This is going to be how the rest of our lives go without this person, not just in that survival mode. So I think the most important thing to do is sort of to take the pressure off those expectations and not to feel like you should be feeling a certain way or you should be reaching a certain place in your grief by a certain time, and just letting yourself kind of feel whatever you're feeling at the time.
Oh, people grieve differently, which is the hard thing, because I know people compare themselves, and their kind of journey to other people. Is there a right way to grieve?
Definitely not. As you say, it's completely unique and there is no right or wrong way. So you and I might go through the exact same experience, losing the exact same person, but the way we process it will be completely different. And all of that is coloured by our childhood, our life experiences, our resilience, our genetic makeup, all of that sort of plays into it. So you might have exactly the same loss on paper, but then the way we go through it is different. And one is not better than the other. One is not right. One is not wrong. So again, it's just about finding what's right for you and what works for you to move through those beginning steps and then the ones that follow.
It's a tough one, isn't it? Have you ever lost anyone, George?
Yeah, absolutely. It was around a similar time, Shezzy, you lost your friend. We had this episode that we did last time, Jana, And I didn't mention it because it was quite raw, like Shezzy, but I had a really good mate pass away from heart conditions. And yeah, he was 20
Gee
years old.
whiz.
So it was young. It was, the first death our year group from high school had experienced. And I remember kind of struggling. It was also during that time where we couldn't go back to New South Wales, or traveling the border was a little bit iffy, rules that you had to get permission and whatnot. And I remember struggling not being able to go to the funeral. I mean, they had the live stream, but you just felt so removed from all of your friends who were also struggling, and you felt a bit disconnected. But yeah, no doubt it was a very, very challenging time. Are there different types of grief?
Yeah, absolutely. And what you just mentioned there, George, is, something that can be like complicated grief, because there are so many layers to it. And there are so many different categories. You could, look for the technical terms in Google and whatever. So in psychology, there are proper words like anticipatory grief or disenfranchised grief or complicated grief. And there's a grief that used to be, a sort of psychological diagnosis. And so there definitely are. And, for example, disenfranchised grief is something that doesn't get talked about very much, because it's where the person's grief isn't really identified. So it might be, someone was talking to me recently about having to medically terminate a baby that wasn't quote unquote compatible with life. So mum having to make that choice about, essentially ending the pregnancy. But then she was saying to me that the biggest grief came from the fact that nobody would talk about it. Everyone was so relieved when she finally got pregnant again and said, oh, great, this is the best news, we can all move on. But inside she's still completely grieving the loss of this baby that, she had to go through this terrible experience with. And she said to me that this is a scar she'll carry for the rest of her life, but literally no one in her life wants to talk about it. Like it didn't exist, and the new baby is all that everyone cares about. Like, oh, okay, great, we can move on. And so there's losses like that all the time, even things like, this may be a bit controversial, but if you think about someone that's maybe having an affair with someone that nobody knows about, and then that person dies, the, lover on the side is completely not acknowledged. Their grief is not acknowledged. They're not allowed to sort of maybe speak it out loud and talk about it, but their loss is very real and their person is no longer there, but they're nobody in the grieving process. So there's all kinds of situations and factors that can sort of play into how grief kind of is expressed. Could go on and on.
For the friends and family and supporters of someone who's going through having lost someone, it's also very difficult to know what to say, how to help. I don't want to push that person deeper into trauma by constantly just going, are you okay? Is everything all right? It's very hard to know what to say without being repetitive and almost just, there's only so many times you can say, are you okay? You often feel helpless not knowing how to help. Is there any suggestions on how those around someone who's going through grief can do a better job of supporting them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the key is, just naturally we all want to make things better for the people we love. We want to fix it. And grief is unfortunately one of those things that nobody can fix, because nothing you do is going to bring back the person that they've lost. And, there's just no getting around that. So it is important to just keep showing that you're there. And a lot of times when somebody's grieving, they might not reply to the text, or they might not return the phone call because, they're just not in that state and they're receiving other messages, or they just can't deal with it in that moment. But don't give up on them. It doesn't mean you are annoying if you keep texting. Send an emoji, send a love heart, just say, thinking of you. I know I can't do anything to make it better, but I love you and I'm here. And then even just go and be practical, go to their house and say, I'm coming over, we're going for a coffee. Because if you say, look, tell me when you're ready and we'll go and do something, the onus is then on the grieving person, who probably doesn't have it in them to get it together and think, okay, yeah, I should take that person up on it, So it's better if we just jump straight in, do the practical things like food, send an Uber Eats voucher. That'll never go astray. They can have it up their sleeve for the time when they just can't deal with cooking, making something. And other things that might be helpful that are individual to that person, can you help with the kids? Can you offer to pick up the kids or take the kids for half an hour, take them to the park, whatever. Just think about what might be practical for that person that you're supporting and just jump in and do it. And, one of the things that I hear often from people is that there's almost that sort of relentless, I'm here if you need me. But then again, it's like, well, I don't even know what I need. I don't even know how to ask for it. I wouldn't even know what to say. So thanks. But then, here I am left again on my own with this grief and I don't know what to do with myself.
God,
so
here,
just
if, here if you
showing-
need anything is something that I know I've said, and it's such a common go-to.
Totally.
Because we just don't have, the vocabulary to know how to support. And I know as a bloke as well, if I was in that grieving position and I got text messages coming going, what do you need or are you okay? I just wouldn't answer because I go, of course I'm shit. But I don't really want to acknowledge that I'm shit because that only makes me feel shitter. So that radio silence that people go through, don't stop. Don't stop trying.
That's it. That's it. Keep the messages coming. And like I said, try to keep it, so that it's not on that person. Just say, hey, mate, I was going to pick up a slab. Can I drop a 6-pack at your door? I don't even need to come in. Something like that, or not even a question. I'm just going to drop it at the front door. Yeah. And then if the person's up for it, they might say, hey, come in, let's have a drink. Or, they might still need their space. But where you're just doing something and just making it happen, I think that's when people will really appreciate it. And as I said, just kind of, respecting that silence and that space and letting them have that time and just being that safety net. So when they're ready to come forward and they're ready to have a chat or they're ready for some distraction and, to go and do something fun, you're there.
Are there different stages of grief? Because I remember once hearing that you go through, the sadness stage or something, then you go through the anger. Are they that clear cut?
So you're talking about the 5 stages of grief from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, which was sort of groundbreaking at the time that it came out. And to some degree that applies, but I don't think, having been through grief myself and having worked, intensively with it, it just doesn't work the way that they originally thought, which was you move sort of progressively through these 5 or what got extended to 7 stages, anger, denial, bargaining, acceptance. All of that is there, but you could be experiencing all of that in the same hour and the same day. It's not that once you move through one phase, you're going to get to the next phase. So I just think there are lots of different facets of grief, and
what were the 5? Can you remember the 5 to name them now?
Yeah, so
or
I think
7?
it's is the first one shock? Not sure. There's definitely anger, denial, bargaining, and acceptance. And
what does bargaining mean?
So it's like making deals with the universe, like, oh God, if I just, promise to do this, then maybe that'll make things better or bring the person back or change this situation I'm in. We all make those sort of deals with the universe, especially if someone's unwell. It's like, oh my God, please, if it's God you believe in or whatever, you're sort of trying to strike any kind of deal you possibly can to change things.
George, I think you had a question.
Yeah, Jana, what if there's somebody listening right now and they know somebody who is grieving, and that person who's grieving is putting a lot of that emotion onto somebody and they're relying on somebody to kind of get them through, and then it gets too much for that person? What's the conversation you have there without making them feel like they're
Guilty.
a problem?
Look, I would always recommend that we all have conversations with our friends about seeking professional support. And that doesn't have to mean that there's anything wrong with you. You can be there and be an active listener and a great supporter for your friend, but you can also say, listen, I'm always here and I will always listen to you. But have you thought about talking to someone else, like a professional who is totally removed from the situation? And you can sort of come at it with love and say, look, I'm always here, but I'm always like Team George. So whatever you say, I'm just going to cheer you on and support you. Sometimes it's helpful having someone who's completely unbiased, who can be on the outside and come up with strategies and things that might be helpful that I might not think of. But I think, seeking professional support is always a good thing because you can't go wrong. It's just having another person in your corner.
So when George was just mentioning before that he lost someone and he couldn't cross the state border and he had to sort of, see the funeral service over Zoom, is there something very cathartic about that ceremony, being in the flesh, singing the hymns, having the cast there, seeing other people, letting those emotions out, crying amongst, your friends and loved ones? That there's a reason why we've got to having this this sort of procedure when we lose someone else. There's obviously power in that, is there, for either healing or at least just closing the loop?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's just about that human connection, which we all need as human beings. That's the one thing that keeps us going, keeps us growing, so to be able to be together with the people you love or even people you don't know who all have that sort of single purpose of having loved the person that's no longer with us, it absolutely is a healing experience. So to miss that because of, border closures or things completely out of your control can make the grief really complex and really complicated, especially if it's you alone on the other side of a computer screen, just kind of like watching along and just feeling completely removed from it. It doesn't give you that real emotional experience, as you say, Grant, about of being together and having that collective grieving experience, which I think does a lot for the grieving process. That's not to say you can't do it on your own and in a removed way, but it just
there's something about the energy and the love and the warmth and that collective remembering of the person that sometimes is a much stronger send off, and therefore you kind of it can help minimize potentially, I think, maybe some of the brutal sadness. We
farewelled Grant's uncle during COVID, and we were riddled with guilt because he wanted to donate his body to science, which they weren't allowing because of COVID.
They weren't accepting, obviously because the early stages of the COVID concern, they weren't allowing, excuse this crude term, but bodies to come into the facilities in case, there were COVID infection risks. So
that was his dream because he loved science, and so he wanted to do that.
And I must have rung around that many hospitals and universities who have these medical schools just so I could sort of give him his one wish, and just couldn't make that happen. And not only that, we weren't able to give him a ceremony and a send off, and
it was awful. And also he had a lot of belongings and goods, and we couldn't even donate a lot of it because nobody was taking donations. And so we just, what do you do with somebody's, things? And I think that I don't know, I think about that a lot.
Yeah, the hardest part was taking stuff to the tip because no secondhand centres weren't taking them in. You couldn't donate it anywhere. The doors were closed, or they just weren't accepting things to come in their doors. And you're like, what a horrible waste of someone's life. Their accumulated possessions, the story of them, and now it just ends up in landfill. That was very hard to resolve because I felt like I was doing his life and his time on this earth an injustice. But it was such tricky times, but we
absolutely
made it hard.
And it's hard. And I spoke to a woman the other day who said that her husband, it was very upsetting, I'm going to cry again. Her husband passed away during COVID, and she said for 3 weeks he was in hospital and she couldn't even visit him.
Oh, God.
And she said she basically said her goodbyes, over the phone. And I just thought that's they'd been married for 54 years.
That's why all this COVID stuff sucks right now, doesn't it? When we realise we're all okay and it wasn't as bad as we thought. But think about all those people who were put in that position where they weren't able to kiss goodbye, you know, the most important people to them. We've robbed them of such an important part of the process.
Do you think, Jana, if death is a real shock, as opposed to if it's, you know, like a terminal illness, does that affect the impact of the grief at all? Like, do you know, can you be more prepared for it?
Well, it's really interesting. I think you think that, you know, we talked about last time, I lost my mum suddenly with no warning. So I've had that experience. And I've also had the experience of other friends and relatives who have had, you know, the diagnosis and that sort of longer path where you have time to, you know, be in denial and then accept what's going on. And I think it's just completely different. The grief is the grief, no matter what. In one sense, look, I go back and forth with this myself about what would I prefer for, you know, the next time I go through something like this. Having that time to prepare and say goodbye and say all the things, I mean, that is invaluable. I would give anything to have had that with my mum. But at the same time, I'm already sort of pre-grieving the death of my dad, who's perfectly well and healthy, because I know one day it will happen, you know, and I've been through the loss of a parent already. So I'm already living with this constant like fear and grief of, you know, the one day sometime between now and the next 25 years that, you know, God willing, that I lose my dad.
And can you successfully talk yourself out of that and go, no, let's treat this as a gift and everything's great, rather than have that big, heavy cloud hang over you?
You would think so, Grant. You know, I'm pretty good at helping other people to do that, but I'm not always so great at applying it to myself, unfortunately. So
it's like a plumber's, you know, plumber's taps are always leaking.
That's right, exactly. So it's a funny one. I mean, I cherish every moment that I have with him, and I have a very close relationship with him, and, you know, probably ring him way too many times a day. So I do. I love all of that connection I have with my dad. But then, you know, if something's happening or, you know, I worry about him for a second, or if I stop to think, oh, my God, like one day he's not going to be there for me to ring. And then what? I'm going to be like completely alone in this world. And my partner's like, what about me? I'm like, yeah, but, you know, you're not my dad. And it's just this constant like circle of, you know, anxiety and fear, and, you know, well, I'm okay.
To be a pseudo psychologist here, don't maybe this is an open statement that's way wrong, but don't a lot of women tend to marry versions of their dad?
That's very true.
Ah!
It is absolutely true, and there are similarities, but it's just not quite the same.
Yeah,
not quite the same. Yeah.
Jana, what about for those people who, like you mentioned, that you have those moments where you go, oh, I really should call because, you know, I don't know when that will be next. If there's someone listening who's bad at calling their family or their close friends.
I love you, Mum.
I think pointing that towards you.
I do love Mum. I do. But like, how do you talk yourself into doing it? Because some people I feel can be a bit afraid of the phone.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I definitely am one of those people that advocates for contact because life is too short, and once they're gone, you don't want to be living with that guilt that, you know, you wish you could have and if only you had. Because when you do lose somebody, there's always guilt, no matter what, whether you've had the best relationship or the worst. So you've got to kind of decide what can you live with if that person's no longer around? Do I want to live with the guilt like, oh, God, I shouldn't have said that, but at least they know that I was whatever, or at least I was in their lives? Or do you want to live with the guilt of, you know, that person died without knowing how I feel and without having that connection with me? And I do understand, you know, there's definitely a caveat to that. There are some relationships that are definitely toxic and you probably shouldn't be going back there. And, you know, maybe there are other ways you can sort of manage that. But I think if there is an option and a possibility to have a relationship and pick up the phone, I think absolutely do it. Send a text, send an email, like whatever it is you're comfortable with, but do connect because you just never know what's around the corner.
Yeah. My That is one of the things that I think about all the time about my girlfriend, because when she became ill, and she was having treatment, I never wanted to go anywhere near her or catch up with her in case one of the kids was sick and I gave her a bug, and it was just, that's one of the biggest regrets, looking back now, I think.
At least you're in good contact, though.
I was in good contact.
Yeah.
Yeah, we spoke all the time. Yeah, but still that, catching up, there is that guilt.
I understand.
Yeah.
And I was talking to one of her friends who really took it quite hard because she only had a 4-week-old baby when she passed away. That must really, impact the way that you grieve, all those hormones and, that I just know when I was, had a 4-week-old baby and you haven't been sleeping and everything's very heightened and,
That's hard to process.
it's really hard.
Absolutely. Yeah. Really hard. And, it's one of those situations where you sort of almost have two parts of yourself. You're trying to be the new mum and look after the baby and, not let it impact all of those parts of yourself that the baby needs. But then, as you know, Shezzy, like grief is sometimes uncontrollable and can just leak out of every pore. And there's not that much you can do about it. But as long as the baby was feeling love, in the moments that mum was okay and that, other family members were around to pick up the pieces, then, I think grief is a healthy expression and it's not the worst thing for that baby to have been experiencing.
One thing I've been thinking about a lot since we last spoke was the evolutionary purpose of grief. If it is so hard, if it does torture us so deeply and hurt for so long, why is it a necessary part of life? Why haven't we evolved like we have with every other of our senses for it not to hurt so much?
Look, honestly, I think we have to some degree because we know how to deal with grief much more effectively than we used to. So we know, for example, it's really important to talk about it and to feel the feelings and not bury them and, stiff upper lip and all of that. We know how much damage that can do by internalizing and bottling up all those emotions. So I think we've come some way in that regard.
Yeah.
And I think as well, the other way to look at it is grief is so awful and there's no getting around that. It's the worst feeling in the world, but it's also just part of the process. And it is that big price we pay for love. So instead of fighting it, and resisting it, sometimes we just have to let it take over, have those big wailing, sobbing moments and let it out, find the people that we can talk to about it. Like these conversations are so helpful. 50 years ago, they would never have been having these conversations in a public way. Absolutely not. So
what you're
now
saying is you can't have life without grief. You can't have love without loss. You can't have light without dark. It's the death that makes the life worth living and gives it value and gives it currency and makes it important, is because when it goes, we realize that's how we recognize the preciousness of what we've got.
Absolutely. That was really beautifully put. And I think, we don't want to wait until it's too late to have appreciated the people in our lives, because all the rest of it doesn't matter. Our jobs, our things, none of that really matters. That's all icing on the cake. It's great. But what really matters at the end of the day is our connection and relationships with the people that are important to us. And if we can skip the hard stuff and start doing that work now on knowing that one day we're going to go through grief. One day we're going to lose people we love. One day we might be the person our people who love us lose, and have those conversations. Tell people we love them. Tell people they're important to us. Do little things like this is the one thing I wish and kind of had this fantasy that I would after losing mum, I had this fantasy that I would come across in a drawer somewhere a handwritten letter from her that she had preemptively just written to me at some point and tucked it away in a drawer. And it was just something I've always, just that last piece of something from her. So I've actually said to my dad recently, I said, this is something that I've always kind of wished I had from mum. So can you just write me a letter? Whip by hand, put it in your undies drawer and just leave it there. And you can write it today, tomorrow, whenever. But just, I would love to discover that one day.
That is so
Have you thought about?
Kind of like,
you need to go to a medium.
oh, I've been to plenty of those, Grant.
How'd you go? Did you get something?
Oh, so many. Oh, my God, so many great things. Really, honestly, the first time I went to see this psychic who I went to see a lot, can I give her a little shout out?
Yeah, hell yeah,
Okay.
go for it.
Elizabeth Muir, she is just fabulous. And the first time I went to see her, she knew nothing about me. All it was my name written down in a book, just Jana, no surname, nothing. And I went in to meet with her. And before I even sat down on the seat, she said to me, your auntie's going through a really rough separation right now. I said, yes, she is. Literally, it had just happened as a shock that week.
Wow.
And then we get going and she said, I know that because your mum's telling me. I was like, okay, you got my attention. I'm here and I am listening. And she then went on to say all of these amazing things that nobody, even I, had forgotten. So, for example, she said, now, did you play violin at school? I said, yes, I did. And she goes, did you get some sort of, bursary or like free lessons or something because they wanted to, encourage your talent? I was like, yes, in year 7, which is in the early 90s. I was given free violin lessons for a term or something because they wanted, like, that is not
No
something that
way.
is written down anywhere.
No.
That's not something that's part of my life. I do not play the violin anymore. Like, she's like, yeah, your mum's just giving me that to acknowledge that she's here.
How did that help you in your grieving process?
that's a really good question.
Oh, it was magic. It was everything. I just felt, the desperation you feel when you've lost somebody is relentless. And it's something that your body and your mind is just constantly trying to resolve, but it can't be resolved. So you're left with this like aching and gaping hole and this pain. So to have this message that she's around and, of course, again, I'm trying to make sense of that. Hang on, how could she possibly, is this a guess? Is this a fluke? And I just had to give myself up to the process and I took it as this beautiful, warm moment of, okay, everything's okay. She's around. She knows what I'm doing. She's like backing me up wherever I am. And I had so many other experiences like that, again, I really wish and hope that this is true and this is what happens and the people we love are around us. And without any evidence to the contrary, why shouldn't I just believe it? I don't know.
yeah.
But it was wonderful. It did so much for my grief.
That's awesome. I know that I hope my mum doesn't mind here, but I might speak on her behalf. And look, she's not one that we could easily send to a medium when she lost her beautiful partner and Noel. But we had one on the podcast, and that person on the podcast wanted to let us know that my mum's partner Noel was messing around, playing jokes on her by moving the paintings on the wall. Like, because my mum's has the most impeccably clean, meticulous, well laid out. She's very house proud. Everything's just in the right place. It's stunning. She does a beautiful job of that. And he was just tipping it slightly on the side, and Mum would be going, "Yes, that's exactly what happened. It's been pissing me off for weeks. I keep walking in, this bloody painting's moved." But just having told her that's Noel has given her the most amount of comfort, just knowing that he's not there beside her in the flesh, but he's still there in her heart and in spirit, and he's still watching over her, and that's done the world of good. Yeah, she only said that to us the other day.
Absolutely. It sort of takes the edge off that emptiness. And
they're not knowing where they are, or if they're happy, are they peaceful, are they That's
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah.
That's why I always
And I think-
feel for those families who've had, children kidnapped or like, they never have that closure. They don't know where their family members are. That grief, I can imagine, would just be
You
would be soul destroying.
The Morecambes? Is that what you're thinking of? Daniel Morecambe?
Well, they
yeah.
got an answer, in the end. But like Janine Vaughan,
Yeah.
know,
A lot of
and-
missing persons cases. Yeah. That must be
the not knowing.
very difficult for families.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unbelievable. Yeah.
How do you know when I know that you said everybody should seek professional help. Is there, are there websites that people could go to if they're scared or, obviously they should listen to your podcast for more advice.
Which is called?
So, well, it's sort of a branch of the Curious Life podcast, which is, where the main poddy has been for the last 4 seasons. But this is called The Days That Follow, and it's a grief recovery podcast. So the idea is I don't want people thinking this is just going to be misery and depression and sadness every episode, because it's absolutely not. The idea is that, grief is universal and it's also everywhere. It's not just when we lose a partner or lose a parent or lose someone to death. There's grief in our collective grief. There's grief in financial struggles, in sports, in loss of identity. Shezi, you and I have talked about, motherhood and parenting, and there's so many little griefs associated with that. There's, it's everywhere in every part of our lives. So it's about equipping us to handle the inevitable experience of grief when we do, and for supporting other people. And it's going to be sort of in my usual way of light and shade. And we'll be talking to lots of well-known people about their experience of grief and how they moved through it, and most importantly, how they made meaning from it. Because for so many people, they've had these terrible things happen, but they've been able to turn it into something powerful and positive. And, we can all just do with a bit of inspiration about how we can do that in our own lives, and how the worst thing in our lives doesn't have to be the full stop. It can actually just be the ending of one chapter and the beginning of another.
It's one thing we always notice too, isn't it? That often when one goes, one arrives. The one in, one out. I don't know if that's a thing. I've always thought it's a thing. I've always known the sing.
You mean like when like a grandmother passes and then a baby's born? In a few months' time.
For me, that pattern it's always been there, and I've always noticed it. But I don't know if it's a real thing. But I feel like it's the universe's kind of way of just
reminding you that life continues.
Yeah, that it evolves, and yeah.
Circle of life.
Yeah, it really bloody is.
Oh my God! Sailor was in The Lion King the other day, so it's so fitting, isn't it?
Yeah,
It
she
is
But
so
it's
fitting.
true. Yeah, absolutely. I lost my beautiful golden retriever of 11 and a half years in October of that year. And the next month I was pregnant with my first baby, or a couple of weeks
And
later.
that's exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
either a grandparent and then someone has a baby, or it just feels like, even just you talking just then, losing a friend and then the other friend has a baby. I just feel like that not that we're being replaced, but there's just the
It is the circle of life, isn't it?
Yeah, the life
Yeah.
just keeps moving through us, doesn't it?
Do you ever remember when we were in Hawaii and it still
I was
sticks
thinking of
with
this
me?
yesterday.
Were you?
Yes.
Well, you can describe it then. 'Cause
We went to a restaurant in Hawaii. We were there
the
for work.
pizza shop.
And we sat down, and there was a bloke on this table for two, and it was just him and a picture of his wife
He had it in a frame, his
sitting there
wife's
on the
face.
table, and he was just chatting to her. So obviously this was the holiday that they dreamt of going on and never got to, and she passed away.
He was cheersing her wine.
Oh, my God.
I know, and the picture was just sitting there, and we're like,
And he was talking about the pizza tour and the flavour of the pizza, and this is what you would have loved it today. The ocean was gorgeous, and the birds were chirping, and the sky was blue, and it melted our hearts.
I was heavily pregnant and crying the whole way through it, and it was so beautiful, but just so awful at the same time.
Just a reminder of
And we
how
paid
much it
for his
hurts.
pizza, remember?
Yeah.
And
He
he,
secretly paid for his food.
because we just felt it was just so heartbreaking. Yeah.
And he's like, oh, you won't believe it. He's talking to his wife. Oh, someone just paid for my food. What a great day this is. You know, and I'm like, oh my God.
Oh my God. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there he is seeing the positives and, in these great
We just would have done
tragedies.
anything to kind of take some of that hurt off him,
Yeah,
you know?
It was
Like,
just so hard to watch. But
and at that stage, I just bought a ukulele and I wasn't very good at it, so I wasn't going to serenade him with anything. So we just...
I want to cause more pain.
Exactly. So we just paid for his food and then left.
yeah, it's just so, those moments where you just remember, like when you lose your first pet as well. I remember when I lost my first guinea pig and it was devastating. Yeah, and I remember crying for days thinking, oh, this is just awful.
Yeah. But I think those are the experiences that in the past, talking about that evolution idea, Grant. Our parents might have sheltered us from or not wanted to talk about it with us. And I think that's another thing that we're doing much better these days is talking with kids about grief. And I think this next generation of kids are so much more equipped and in tune with their feelings and expression than, even my generation or certainly my parents' generation were.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And that's an incredible gift.
I think that's going to make a much greater society as well. I think that kind of awareness that they have vocabulary for their feelings now. They know it's okay to table them and explore how they feel, what they're going through, and share that with others. I think that's just going to make the world such a great place to live in. I think it's going to be far more balanced with far more love and compassion and
Do you find that, George?
and less turbulence.
Seeing as it's, your generation we're talking about.
Yeah, we're having these conversations more and more in the workplace. I know certainly at my, back end years of high school that the conversation was more prevalent and with parents as well. So, yeah, I think it's going to make for a, more open space in the future for sure. I think you should also, Jana, not change your job title, but add to your job title psychic, because before you came on, we were literally talking about The Lion King and you sing Circle of Life. Just saying.
She's psychology guru, psychic, entrepreneur extraordinaire, and you're mad on the gram. I see you. You're a fiend for posting. I see all your people commenting on everyone's, and you're very lovely and supportive.
Oh, look, you got to do what you got to do, Grant. It's, the way of the world.
Hustle hard, hustle hard.
We should probably let you go so you can go and play nurse to your poor son.
Yeah, well done not getting any blood on that beautiful white linen shirt.
No, he won't be coming anywhere near.
It's new.
Thank you.
I think someone said to me the other day, would you like to live forever? And I reckon the answer is no, because if you would live forever, nothing would be special because it would always be there. Knowing that there is an end makes today feel special. And I think
is true.
I think that's powerful. Yeah.
Yes.
I
what?
love
that actually.
I forgot to ask you, Jana, very quickly. There's a lot of people who are grieving the loss of the Queen who have never met her. Is that very common?
Absolutely. Things like this, when a public figure dies, especially someone like the Queen who, let's say presided over so many countries, it is called collective grief. And that's when we all kind of go through this experience of having lost someone we don't know, who's really important. I think a lot of people felt that way after Olivia Newton-John passed away too. For a lot of people, that would have been a big surprise, not knowing that she'd been so unwell. And she was a beloved figure of positivity and hope, and particularly for people who might be going through a cancer journey of their own, that could have been completely devastating to see her lose her battle, even if they had absolutely no chance in hell of ever meeting her. So I think it's almost like an opportunity to express grief and go through that feeling of having lost someone, but it's sort of in a safer sort of way because it's not somebody that's in your everyday life. And it just goes to show we're all these very emotional people, whether we want to admit it or not. And sometimes we need a moment like this to remember that our real grandmother is important, or, you know, the real people in our lives need that extra connection again, and remembering to hug your kids a bit tighter and be grateful for what you do have.
I think the Queen was particularly hard for us because both our grandmothers looked like the Queen.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So it was like losing your grandparent all over again.
Yeah.
But
I felt like that too. And I know there's a lot of discussion around, you know, First Nations people, and I completely see that side of it too. But I think when you've grown up with somebody on the TV and in the media, it's hard not to connect and link that person to the people in our lives.
Yeah, for sure. I remember, and as a racing car driver, you know, I was there the day that the great Peter Brock died. You know, I was in in the same rally that he was in, and then he was just this formidable force that was just no one come close in ability and charisma, and he dominated decades. And the fact that he had an accident and died in the same rally that I was in was just such a shock of my own mortality, you know, because at that point I'd just been like a fearless boy, aggressively just, you know, climbing the ladder and winning races and throwing myself off buildings and just going nuts, going hard, and then going, holy shit, there's consequences if I get this wrong. Yeah, and it was it really hit me hard, because if the best can die like in a split second, then what chance do the rest of us have? So, it was. I wrestled with that, you know, for quite a long time. Should I keep racing? Particularly as I got kids as well, you know. Is it irresponsible for me now that I'm a father to continuing to race, knowing that, you know, that you can easily die in these events? And I wrestled with that a lot, but we came around to realizing that you still have to chase your dreams, and you still have to have a passion, and without passion, there's no fire inside. So, there are positive benefits whilst there are risks.
Do you remember Steve Irwin then died, like not long after?
2 weeks apart, I think.
Yeah. I actually felt like the whole world was ending, I remember.
Yeah.
There was a third person as well.
There was a third.
I had huge grief when Steve Irwin died. It felt, you know, like it was my dad had died, you know, seeing little Bindi up there and just, you know, watching the funeral and sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. And probably it was in close proximity to the loss of my mum, probably maybe a year or two after. But, I felt that huge sense of loss. And, again, he wasn't someone I, you know, had a vague interest in, but he wasn't like, I wasn't a mad Steve Irwin fan. But it was, really,
it was
really
like,
deep
it was like
for
he
me
was the
as
head
well.
of state, effectively, wasn't he? It was like losing the king. I think George, though, there was no one more heartbroken. You felt a sense of loss, George, didn't you, when Bindi married Chandler, because that meant that you were out. There was no chance you were ever gonna meet the little love of your life, the great Bindi Irwin, and she was off the market for good.
Jana, she ended up with a guy called Chandler Powell. He's a wakeboarding surfer, American, and tall, dark hair. I don't know the eyes. I haven't looked because I can't bring myself to it. But
you're suffering from a bit of grief, George.
This is my real grief, Jana.
Look, you know, George, life is long. You never know where life might take you and Bindi.
Their relationship might not be that strong, mate.
You know, I was actually at his funeral, and the busloads of people that were turning up with all the flowers, and people just dropping to their knees and crying, and there were people that flew over from America. There were people who flew from Hong Kong. I've never seen anything like it. It gives me goosebumps now. It was just...
But again, what a great life to have had that impact on that many people. Like, wow, what a powerful force to have affected so many lives so positively. Yeah.
Yeah, his passion of conservation, it's still going at Australia Zoo. They're still living on with his great message. A legacy was left.
You know, because you're hiding behind the fence with your binoculars there, just hoping to see her, aren't you?
I'm currently in the elephant enclosure right now.
Oh, thank you.
See these leaves?
Thank you, Jana. We should let it go.
A wonderful chat. Give yourself a plug again. Where can we find you?
You can find me at the Curious Life podcast or at The Days That Follow on Instagram. And we are just batch recording the new pod. So jump on the Insta to be first to hear the episodes when they drop.
Yay.
Can't wait.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Appreciate
Thanks so
it.
much for having me.
No
Look after
worries.
yourself.
Hope the little man's feeling better.
Yeah. Thanks,
Thank
Jana.
you. All
Yeah,
right, no
Firestone.
problem.
Bye.
Bye.
Wow.
Did you just say, oh, you're right? Did you say see you Firestone?
Yeah, I think that should be her nickname.
Best name, Jana Firestone. That is like a superhero name if I've ever heard
She's
one.
so calming. She's just like a warm hug. Like even this afternoon, and she's like, "Oh, my son's injured himself, but that's okay because I'll just get my dad to come over and look after the other 2 kids, because she loves what she does and it's very important."
Today was one of those episodes where I go, oh, do I just put the entire episode as a promo? Because the whole lot was just so valuable. Lots in it.
Goodness
It is.
everywhere, wasn't there?
Yeah, and we've had a lot of emails and messages from people over the time that we've been doing the podcast. A lot of loss. Lots of people saying that, we've become their new friends or their new regular.
There is a theme in that, isn't there, in all the messages we receive. And I guess, look, if we're trying to make podcasts for many different reasons, some to entertain, some to make you laugh, some to learn, and then some to heal, I guess. And death is unavoidable. So, I hope if you're going through something, I hope you find some comfort in the words from Jana, and you find some tools that can just make life just that little bit better, a little bit easier for you. And we wish you well. We're sending you our love.
We are. This podcast, I think GD and I, we jump in we don't really have much of an idea on what this podcast will ever be about. Shezzy's got most of the notes ready to go.
There's notes?
But yeah, well,
Sometimes.
that term's quite loose, but
There used to be notes. I don't have time to do notes anymore.
but we kind of I was just sitting there as a listener as well, just and the moments where I got a bit emotional. So if it raised any thoughts, feelings, concerns, Lifeline 13 11 14 is the number.
Well, the Curious Life podcast to get some more tools from Jana Firestone.
Get on it.
Yeah. That was nice. I was thinking about you yesterday going, what was our last podcast? Because it was pretty crazy. What was that?
The astral travel.
Astral travel. I was thinking yesterday while I was mowing the lawns going, George is like...
He just opened his eyes to all this new stuff.
There's some trippy shit being thrown your way, brother. I was only discovering all this sort of stuff from the ages of about 40. And we're just bombarding all these alternate realities and forms of living, and
It's just prepping me for absolutely everything in the world. So I cannot get damaged or hurt from anything. I owe it to you guys. Thank you.
We think we should send you to one of his retreats and see if we can get you to astral travel.
yeah, that'd be. You
That'd be
reckon we'll
good.
find George when he's about 35, and he'd be just like the top of the Himalayas. He'd be like a monk just up in Nepal.
Still
and
trying to grow his little pissy
Still growing his
moustache.
little seedy little porno mo, and then just doing a little bit of this is Monk Radio, 97.7.
They don't talk.
God bless,
Monks don't
love to
talk.
you from the great creator from above. Are you feeling my vibes today, Nepal? Come on, here's Metallica.
Do you know what? I was just thinking, it would be interesting to talk to a Buddhist monk.
Yeah,
Wouldn't
yeah,
it? I've heard one talk before. It was overseas, and they just
I think I heard an Aussie guy kicking around. Like Jay Shetty. There's an Aussie guy
let's get him on the podcast.
who, because I want to go. Why for starters?
Why
And
be a monk?
Why? Why would you do that? And what do you get out of it? They're my 2 questions.
Or Shezzy, you can wait 15 years, and as Grant said, I will be at that point in my life.
And I'll
Yeah.
head up to the Himalayas.
You'd be with his
We'll have my
shaved
direct
head and
number.
his orange gown on.
No, but I'd like to know
His
a little bit
Birkenstocks.
about. I don't know. I don't know a lot about Buddhism.
There's different kinds of it. I'm pretty sure. There's the silent dudes.
Well, they'd be a bit difficult on a podcast.
Yeah, that's not going to be a great chat. Just nod if you got an answer here. Was it good in the monastery? Yep. Okay, that was a nod for anyone who's listening along. That'd be a good hour of your time, wouldn't it? Me describing their responses.
At least we wouldn't have to type in captions.
No, I think once they leave, they can sort of talk about it all.
Well, we'll have to investigate. Well,
I remember
I will have
I
to
was
investigate.
overseas once. I was overseas once, and I saw this monk coming towards me, and I'm like, "Oh, look at this radiant bloke! Isn't this nice?" And then he stopped me, and I'm like, "Oh, oh my God, he's chosen me out of the crowd. He must have special words for me or something. And he's like, he couldn't speak English, but he was like, he goes, yeah, you're very loved. And I was like, oh, he goes, you're very powerful. And that he only knew a couple of key words. And I'm like, oh my God, this is obviously, God's just told him to come and speak to me, and I feel amazing. And he hands me this like golden card with these beautiful words written on there about how important I am to the universe and wonderful things are coming to me. And I'm like, oh my God, what a day! What a day! And then he held his hand out and asked for money. And I was like, oh, damn it.
He gave you a blessing.
He gave me a blessing, but I had to pay for it.
Well,
real monks don't do that, I was told.
It's a
don't
scam.
I got scammed.
Oh.
So I was
in
didn't know.
Sydney at a nightclub once, and I saw a monk. Her name's Sophie.
She's very religious.
Oh my God. What about this? When you were saying that, like, he came up to you out on the street, do you remember when we were in Bali that time? And I may have already said this on the podcast. It still sticks with me. It was some seedy. Remember we went to that Mexican restaurant and we walked out and that seedy person came up and he's like, hey, you want some drugs or something? Remember he said to you?
Doesn't feel like a monk.
No, it wasn't a monk, and you just walked past. You're like, whatever, mate. And then he came up to me and he goes,
Yes.
hey, you want some estrogen? And I was like, sorry? And he goes, you want some estrogen?
So I assume estrogen is something that you give to someone who's like at menopausal age?
Like
Is that
how
what that-
hurtful. This was only
It's very forward.
Yeah.
like last year.
He's offered me the good stuff and goes to you, do you want some
No, we
estrogen?
thought maybe I was a transvestite. Do you think?
Maybe you thought your Adam's apple was too big.
My makeup was terrible that night, I must admit.
Yeah, but your
Like,
cock looked beautiful.
Whoa.
Stop. No, if anybody knows why someone would offer you estrogen, please let us know.
I'm not too sure.
That's really still haunts me because I think, what did he see in me that he thought I would be buying
Didn't
dodgy
see in you,
estrogen?
he saw on you.
And we didn't even do a fishing story. So, do you have a fishing story?
No.
Oh, do you have a fishing
There's
story?
Nothing for your husband.
Caught a very small flathead in a place called the Causeway in Yeppoon of Queensland, just out of Rockhampton, mate. If you want to go and catch fish, don't go there because you don't catch anything.
Okay, that was a great story. So Kerry
Remember
M,
you
who
and I-
wrote in, my husband will only listen if you tell a fishing story. I hope that services it for you.
Do you remember you and I went barramundi fishing?
Oh, yeah.
And I hooked like that real big one, and
You
then
hooked
you
it.
hooked me.
Yeah, I did too. You got a meter, like a big barra, like
Yeah.
a big unit.
But
and
Grant
then,
held it for the photos.
and then we were like, it was like a cartoon. Like you were fishing on that side, I was fishing on this side, and I'd reel it in, and your rod would go, brrr,
Yeah,
and then
I
you
was
reel
like,
it in, my
oh.
rod would go. Brrr. We thought we both had one, but all we'd had was each other.
We had each
That's a
other's
metaphor
lines.
for how strong and hooked up you two are.
Yeah,
That
it's a
is so
metaphor.
true.
There's a lot of tugging in our relationship. Is that what you're trying to say?
Oh my God,
This is
has
confusing.
gone real loose. All right, we're out.
All right. Good night, Australia.
Night, lovers.
Thanks for
Bye.
listening.
It's All True, the podcast with Grant and Shezzy Denya.
Bye